Okay, I know you're sick of hearing it, but we got more dramatic dinosaur soft tissues, and we interview a special guest regarding fossil human footprints. Join us. This is Genesis Week. Welcome to this episode of Genesis Week, the weekly program of creationary commentary on news, views, and events pertaining to the Origins controversy, made possible by the supporters of Core Ottawa, Citizens for Origins Research and Education, and of course carried on the Christianima Network, christianima.com, Christian cinema at its finest. Excellence in power of broadcasting. We continue to bring you the information the anti-creationists don't want you to see or hear, and give you glory to our Creator while doing it. We here at Genesis Week believe your brain was intelligently designed, and God wants you to use it. Remember, if you get lost in cyberspace, you can just punch in wazulu.com or genesisweek.com, and you can find us, and also subscribe to our YouTube channel to get extras like Crevo rants and full interviews with our guests. I'm your host, Ian Juby. Oh, you know I don't want to bore you guys by continually flogging fossil equines. For those of you non-sciencey types, or if you don't know Latin names much, that means beating a dead horse. But this is just too rich. We've reported on many stories of preserved soft tissues from dinosaurs, along with blood cells, bone cells, and probable dinosaur DNA. Well, in June of 2012, at the Pipestone Creek Dinosaur Initiative, not far out of Grand Prairie, Alberta, a fossil hadrosaur dinosaur was found with actual intact skin. Dr. Phil Bell from the University of Regina and Dr. Federico Fantai from the University of Bologna in Italy have been working the Pipestone Creek site, and the unfossilized dinosaur skin is undergoing studies in a machine called a synchrotron at the Canadian Light Source. They're trying to determine the actual color of the dinosaur. Now, we've said it before, and we'll say it again. This dinosaur is alleged to be 70 million years old. Do you really think that dinosaur skin could remain undecayed, unfossilized, preserved for 70 million years? Decades of intense forensic research would disagree. The evidence is that this dinosaur is young, perhaps thousands of years old, certainly not millions. The evidence from the dinosaurs and forensics strongly points to the dinosaurs being killed in a worldwide flood just a few thousand years ago. Exactly as the Bible tells us, documenting a worldwide flood known as Noah's Flood. 2 weeks ago, we ran a special episode in the Paluxy Fossil Human Footprints. Now, it was not possible to keep up with the comments. There was hundreds on the creation evolution discussion groups on Facebook alone. And of course, as predicted, the vast majority of negative comments related to things we actually addressed in the show. Nevertheless, we got a number of positive comments and feedback, and thank you for those of you who took the time to write in, especially those of you who took the time to send in an encouraging note. Now, in that show, I had mentioned in passing that Glen Rose was certainly not the only place we find fossil human footprints, and one YouTuber asked if we could please elaborate. To do so, I asked my good friend to join me. Dr. Aaron Judkins is a fellow Paluxy Fossil Tracks researcher, a resident of Glen Rose, Texas, and Aaron and I have actually done quite a bit of research together and even discovered what may turn out to be the largest tridactyl dinosaur footprints found to date. Aaron, known to some as Maverick, is an author, explorer, biblical archaeologist, and author of the book, The Global Phenomena of Fossil Human Footprints in Rock, which he exhaustively details the ludicrous number of fossil human footprints found all over the world. Welcome to the show, Aaron.
Hi, Ian. Thanks for having me on. It's an honor to be on the show with you.
It's an honor to have you on. Okay, one quick question or comment before we continue. one of the most common questions I get all the time, and I'm sure you get the same question, is where are all the human fossils? Now, as we've discussed here on Genesis Week in previous shows, there are loads of human fossils, but we never hear about them. And it's usually because they're found in the wrong place, evolutionarily speaking. So let us remember that technically, fossil human footprints are human fossils. So, Aaron, just how many fossil footprints are there? Fossil human footprints?
Well, Ian, that's a really good question. There's hundreds of documented fossil human footprints around the world, but there may be thousands of human fossil footprints around the world. Now, we know that Laetoli, Africa, in Tanzania, certainly was one of the first human fossil footprints to be put on the map in the 1970s. But there's a site in Australia that, according to the scientists there who studied over at Mungo Park, have learned through ground-penetrating radar that under the sand dunes there may be about 5,000 fossil human footprints just at that one site. So it could be up in the thousands for sure.
So now let me get this straight then. So ground penetrating radar into sand dunes?
Yes, they've an Aboriginal woman came across the first tracks over there some years back. I think it was 2005, but of course she brought it to the attention of the scientists. They went over there, looked at. They are fossil human footprints, Ian. And get this, there's trails of them. There's trails of people running up ahead, and then there's trails of people walking, including children. What's interesting, though, is some of the footprint links are 6 foot 4 inches and 6 foot 6 inches. So these are quite remarkably long tracks for at least for the part of that world and over there in Australia.
Okay. Now, when you say, sorry, you gave dimensions there, but I'm missing what you said. These are the footprints for a person that tall?
Yes. Yeah. The lengths of these tracks are one set of tracks are well. I should clarify the measurement of the tracks. There's a formula that you get the height from, and so when the scientists run that formula, and there's a calculation to it, but they take the length of the track, and then it gives them the estimated height of the person, the estimated height. They're saying some of these tracks and the heights of these people who walked in these trails were at least 6 foot 6 and 6 foot 4 inches in height.
Interesting. Okay. So now this is news to me, and this is very interesting. So these are these fossil sand dunes? Because I know we encounter that claim a lot in the geologic record. What they claim are fossil sand dunes. So are these like solid rock, or are they sand dunes?
No, they're fossil sand dunes, and they've exposed quite a number of them already. But scientists believe that there's thousands more under these fossil sand dunes, according to this ground-penetrating radar. And to my knowledge, they haven't been excavated yet, but they are indeed fossil human footprints.
Very interesting. Okay, so now you and I are familiar with this. I'm just trying to bring the viewers up to speed. So basically what you're saying is there's a lot of human footprints and found around the world. And the large number mostly consists of fossil human footprints that have been acknowledged in the secular scientific literature. So now, just how many cases, throw a wild guess out there, how many cases are there you can think of, like the Paluxy fossil human footprints, which have been discounted and not mentioned in the secular literature, except like in disdain and to mock them?
Well, there's a number of sites for those. The site over in Mexico is a very clear example of that. I think it was back in 2000, between 2004 and 2006, Dr. Sylvia Gonzalez was one of the first ones on the scene over there, and there was some workers who came across the site. They were working near the locale, and they come across fossil human footprints. Dr. Sylvia Gonzalez is a secular scientist. She went over to look at them. She's very well studied in this area of geology, and she went over to take a look at them. She brought in some other scientists, and she indicated that these are indeed fossil human footprints. They took measurements. They did all kinds of studies on these. They mapped them out. And interestingly enough, Ian, is that these footprints showed the same morphology and the same contour and the same characteristics as the Laetoli footprints in Africa. So the science was pointing to authentication. And so she published on this, and what they realized is because of the implications of what this meant in the academic community, that it totally went against the theory of evolution, which is the Clovis first model, that people came down through the Bering Land Strait. Well, it totally eradicated that because they got a date of 40,000 years. And so when they realized that that kind of disrupted the Clovis first model of humans occupying South America, they tried to redate it. Now they can't carbon date it because it's rock. But what they do is they use OSL, optically stimulated luminescence dating, which attempts to date the sand grains in the rock with light. And when they redated it, they got 1.3 million years. So now they're really in a tight spot because now they don't know what to do. So what did they do? Well, they ended up tossing out Dr. Sylvia Gonzalez's conclusions and said, whoops, we're sorry. We're going to take back all the publications. Of course, this is peer-reviewed, Ian.
Right.
And they just totally eradicated it and said, we're sorry, but these are not human fossil footprints after all. They're actually pop marks. Now, that's a pretty interesting conclusion after all the science was done on it.
Oh, man. Okay. So, yeah, that's just one classic example then. That's rich. Okay. So, taking off from that then. Now, in the previous special episode on the Paluxy tracks, it's interesting you brought this up. We considered the possibility that the fossil human footprints in the Paluxy were perhaps strangely eroded dinosaur footprints, or a dinosaur walking on its heels, and others in years gone by have even suggested they were tracks made by an unknown amphibian or something. You have studied the Paluxy fossil human footprints in tremendous detail. Can we know that the Paluxy fossil human footprints, or these ones you just brought up, or the Laetoli tracks, can we know that these are actual fossil human footprints, and how?
Well, that was my concern when I first went to the Paluxy to study it in 1996. I've been studying this phenomenon for a very long time, as well as you have, Ian. And that was my first question: are these authentic? And to me, as an independent researcher, I wanted to know the answer to that question, because this would have extreme implications if they were authentic, and I had never even heard of such a thing. So to me, it was challenging my own paradigm. And so I began to go down and research. The key is that they're either fossil human footprints, they're natural, they're carved, or they're some kind of animal. So what you have to do is you have to use the standards for identifying human fossil footprints. And to that is, well, you have to understand that you need at least 3 characteristics in a footprint to really make the claim. So it needs to either have, the toes, the base of the metatarsal. You need to have the transverse arch, the medial side of the longitudinal arch. You need to have the lateral side of that arch. You need to have the calcaneus heel, the base of the toes. All those are in the mud push-up if it's there. So all that would help identify human fossil footprints. Now that's in situ. You have to establish a trail. You have to establish that there's mud up push, and clearly when you study these in situ, which means that it's in place, it's in the original context. When you look at it and you use the same standards that the scientists use for Laetoli, you understand that the Paluxy fossil footprints are even more so in human characteristics when you use that standard than they are with the Laetoli ones. The problem is with Laetoli is that even Mary Leakey back in the 70s said that they are like human footprints. Tim White said they match the characteristics of modern day human feet. Dr. Louise Robbins, who Mary Leakey flew down, who's probably one of the foremost prominent forensic footprint scientists in the nation, went down there, and he even said these are clearly modern human feet that match the characteristics of modern day feet. In other words, there's no change in morphology. If those footprints are 3.6 million years old from Australopithecus afarensis, which we know as Lucy, and that's what they attribute to those footprints over there in Laetoli. But if they are, and they're not, but there's no change in the morphology of the foot. They're saying that it's just like a human, modern day human foot. Matter of fact, Dr. Robbins looked at the feet of the modern day indigenous people over there. They don't wear shoes, and he compared their feet with the fossil footprints over at Laetoli, and he said they are just modern human feet that made those. There's no change in morphology, Ian. That means there's no evolution. That means that that's not made by Australopithecus afarensis Lucy. That means that there was either, you have to make either one or two conclusions. One is that humans, modern humans, you have to push them back 3.6 million years old, which even evolution won't do, or you have to say that rock is not 3.6 million years old, and that everything is much more recent than they're telling us, Ian. It's not millions and millions of years. It's actually recent creation, and the Bible has said it.
Amen. Okay, that's very well put. Thank you very much. Okay. Now, on that note, with the Paluxy fossil footprints in particular, are there other locations where fossil human footprints are found alongside dinosaur tracks?
Well, in the documentation, most of the fossil footprints are not found with dinosaur tracks. But there is one site over in Russia, in Turkmenistan, which we call the Russian Paluxy. The reason we call it that is because it's very similar to the Paluxy site. When people hear about the Paluxy, this is evidence that's been brought to light since the late, since Roland T. Byrd came and looked at some of the prints over what now is the state park, and understood that he saw prints that he didn't quite know what they were. The indications initially were that they were human fossil footprints, but so this has been known since the even before that, in the 1910s, when the people here locally at Glenrose first found them after the big flash flood. So yes, there is other sites, and the Russian Paluxy is one of them. Secular scientists have studied that site in Turkmenistan, and they attribute that trackway to the Jurassic, and they said that they have found fossil human footprints with dinosaur tracks. Now, that's quite astounding when the scientists, and this is in the 1980s, that made the papers over there in Russia, and we've got documentation on that. But when we have tried to get over there to study it, at least within recent times, we haven't been able to get over there. But there has been at least one who's gone over there to study it, and it's quite interesting that there is really human fossil footprints in this site, that their scientists made the initial claim that there's human fossil footprints with these dinosaurs over there in the same track layer.
Very interesting. And of course, if we've detailed on this show, we had a special episode where we discussed the Berea, Kentucky fossil footprints, which, I mean, this was firsthand research from David and myself. It shocked me to no end to find out these were genuine fossil human footprints. And that was in Carboniferous rocks. So now, according to the evolutionism, then those footprints would be before the time of the dinosaurs. So, are there other instances like that around the world?
Well, there is. There's a couple of fossil footprints that we have at the Creation Evidence Museum in Glen Rose, Texas. One of those is the Stinnett track. Now, the Stinnett track was found in Stinnett, Texas, and that was actually found, I believe, in the mid-1950s. And that really was found in a trail by a man who was out and about. And what happened is that initially, I believe there were 9 of these footprints in a trail. So the Stinnett track is actually in a rock layer of Permian rock. And of course, the Permian goes back before the age of the dinosaurs, so that those tracks should not be there. Now, we've studied these tracks. We understand that according to the spiral CT CAT scans that were done, because these tracks are now taken out of the original matrix, so you can't study them in situ, but we understand that there's compression that is underneath the layering in the rock, which shows a real thin crustal layer on top, by the way, that you can't carve. Even the people who are really, I guess, not advocates for the human fossil footprints really can't get around that. But the CT scans clearly show that there's compression. Another one is the Meister print that was found in the 60s in Utah. William Meister was out trilobite hunting, and he found a human fossil sandal print in this rock that supposedly goes back to the time before the dinosaurs. And this rock had 2 little trilobites in the sandal print that was crushed when the person stepped. So this clearly shows, Ian, that the Meister print, the Stinnett track, clearly are in rock layers, according to their own timeline of evolution and uniformitarianism, that this goes back to the time before the dinosaurs in Permian rock. So these are clearly evidences for a young Earth creation.
Excellent. Okay. Well, thank you so much for being on the show, Aaron. This was a lot of fun, and good to see you again, even if only virtually. We got to get out wading in the Paluxy again soon.
Yes, we do. Thanks, Ian. Appreciate it.
You can get a copy of Dr. Juggens' book, The Global Phenomena of Fossil Human Footprints in Rock, from Aaron's Lulu page or from Amazon.com, and you can check out Aaron's website at aaronjudkins.com. Stick around, we'll get into the mailbag right after this short break.
This show is sponsored in part by Canada's first permanent creation museum in the heart of Alberta's dinosaur beds, the Big Valley Creation Science Museum, bvcsm.com. And by GenesisPark.com, where you can get your own beautiful hardcovered copy of the Chronicles of Dinosauria, the history and mystery of dinosaurs and man, now available from New Leaf Publishing.
What does the Bible say about aliens? Is there life on other planets? What can science tell us about the possibility of aliens? Ian Juby gives answers to these and many more questions in this fascinating and highly disturbing subject. Looking analytically at the subject, complete with the testimonies of people who claim to have been abducted by aliens. The answers will probably surprise you. In this 1.5-hour lecture, Ian shows that the alleged aliens are a problem and that Jesus is the solution. Order online today at Ian's bookstore.
Mail for me?
I forget. You're supposed to cut the blue wire or the red wire? Or I could just pull the detonator.
In last week's episode, we briefly pointed out how radically different apes and humans are. I got one rather nasty response, which I actually won't show because of the language used, but the person was venting over Coco, the gorilla who has allegedly learned sign language. In particular, when the gorilla's pet cat died, Coco expressed sadness over the loss in sign language. Now, it should be noted that Coco's sign language has been controversial to say the least, and that the gorilla has really not demonstrated true comprehension of what she is signing. And that's other researchers saying this, not I. However, several apes wrote into Genesis Week expressing their frustrations with me that I would dare say they were less intelligent than humans. A chimpanzee living in Chicago and going by the name Darwin's Pet emailed us, saying that while his cousin, also a chimpanzee, did not have the skills yet to fly to the moon, his cousin had successfully scratch-built and flown a number of very large and high-powered model rockets, including one which did make it into space. The video of his flight is on his YouTube channel. An orangutan from northern Alberta wrote in and sent us a copy of her artwork, expressing her disdain that I would dare suggest apes do not produce art. A gibbon employed as a mathematician with a major engineering company in Toronto also left a post on our Facebook page claiming that I'd driven over several bridges that he had performed the necessary safety calculations for, and thus I had put my life in the hands of a less intelligent ape. Now, in case you hadn't clued in, this is all in satire to emphasize my point. No matter how much you portray apes to be human-like, they are anything but human-like. There is a vast chasm of difference between apes and humans. There always has been and always will be. Well, this great ape is going to sign off for this week. I'm your host, Ian Juby, and thanks for watching. We realize there's a lot of competition out there for your viewership, and we appreciate that you chose to watch Genesis Week. If you could do us a favor, it is very difficult to gauge viewership on specialty stations and channels, and we'd really appreciate hearing from you if you have watched the show. Please take a split second to drop us a single-lined email saying, "Watched the show." We'll know what you're talking about. You can send in that single line or comment question to us in a number of different ways. You can email us at comments@genesisweek.com, or you can send us a tweet at GenesisWeek, or you can go to genesisweek.com, which is our YouTube channel, find the most recent show and leave a comment there, or you can even visit our Facebook page and leave a note there. Remember those words of warning from our Creator, the Lord Jesus Christ, who said, "I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man comes to the Father but through me." We'll see you next week.
We are a viewer-supported program and need your support to keep this program on the air. Please pray for us, and if you wish to financially support the program, Canadians can make a tax-deductible donation to Core Ottawa, Canada North Post Office Box 72075, Ottawa, Ontario, K2K 2P4. While we cannot offer tax-deductible receipts outside of Canada, donors wishing to financially support the program can do so online at ianjuby.org/donations, and thank you for your support.